All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the last breakout session of TC. You guys all have a good conference? Yeah? On behalf of everyone at Tableau, we are so glad you guys are here. So I just want to, one last time, extend a big thank you to coming to our conference. I know you've probably heard it from a bunch of people, but this really is the highlight of the year for our employees because they get to interact with you. So thanks for making this a great experience for us as well. Who's excited to see Adam Savage? Yeah? So I know I'm the last thing standing between you and that. So I won't take it harshly if you jettison out. But I do have some prizes to give away at the end. So reason to stay if you wish. I didn't want everyone running out mid-session, so I thought some prizes plus prizes are fun. So, all right. So welcome. This is Don't Be a Pill. If you're intending to be somewhere else, great. This is a beginner desktop session, but it's really about thinking about Tableau a little bit differently. So even if you've been using Tableau a while, hopefully you'll learn something new from this. Who here's been using Tableau more than a year? All right. And how about less than a year? Okay, and keep your hands up if it's been less than 6 months. Less than 3 months. Okay. So we have a broad range of people here in the session with us today. Like you guys, San Diego was my first conference. It was far smaller back then, about 2,000 people. And we were packed to the gills in the room. It was like standing room only. But when I came to San Diego, I was a customer. And I had been using Tableau about 6 months at that time. I have gone on since then to work with over 100 different Tableau customers. And today I run enterprise analytics at Tableau. So how we do Tableau at Tableau. And where I started from was just like you guys. I didn't know a lot. I would spend a lot of time on the forums when I started, and I would see the questions that people asked, and I would wait and see how people responded to the answer if I didn't know the answer. And I wouldn't dig into their explanation of what they had done. I would just go open up the workbook that they had attached, and I would try to deconstruct what they had done in the workbook to get to the solution. And then I would go back and read the write-up. And through this process of sort of teasing apart what was going on in a workbook, I came to understand that there are some rules for how Tableau works. So we're going to talk about some of those rules today. So at the time, I hadn't yet met this guy on the right, my significant other and his 2 daughters, and we really like football in our house. And I didn't know anything about football 5 years ago either, so there's hope for you too if you want to learn football. And so I chose to use Seattle Seahawks data for this example because it's fitting because it's blue and green. So with that, that was just earlier. I'm going to share with you my playbook and try to explain some of my understanding of what's going on in Tableau to hopefully help you get away from show me and start being able to create the things that you want and imagine in Tableau. So that's sort of our goal for today. When you're first using Tableau, it can feel so easy. I just click on a couple things and then I get this awesome visualization. But then when you get to the next stage and you start getting intent for what you want to build, it can seem very frustrating. You can't quite make sense of everything that's happening. You can't quite get it the way you want. So we're going to dig into that. So there are 2 different types of pills in Tableau. Switch over. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between Tableau and PowerPoint, so bear with me as I try and hit the right button down below. So this is Tableau. Hopefully you know that. And in Tableau, you have your dimensions on the left and your measures on the bottom. And I think we're all largely familiar with dimensions and measures. And then I have these other areas that we call shelves. And in Tableau, the reason why we all love it is I can grab a measure or a dimension and drag it right out to the view and drop it. And Tableau responds. And so when I do that, I am pulling out what we call a pill. These blue and green things are pills. And they are very important to how Tableau interprets data and draws the picture. So the first technology that Tableau is built upon is called vizql. You may have heard of it before. It's called a visual query language. And the pills are what give instructions to vizql on what to draw on the screen. So there are two types of pills. There are green continuous pills and blue discrete pills. So when I think of continuous pills, I think about the yard lines on a football field. I can take a ball and I can place it at any point on the yard line. But it doesn't change that I've got my two end zones and I've got the position of the ball. I could measure that ball down to the inch. I could measure it down to the number of grasses, right? But I'm always gonna have, or I can round that up to like the yardage line, like it's on the 20-yard line. Well, it might actually be on the 20.024 yard line. We often talk about continuous numbers in sort of whole numbers, but they could go down to infinity. That's the really great thing about an axis. So, some examples. Sum of score, average ticket price, ball placement on the field line. These are continuous values. They're part of a range of values. And I can, again, round up to be a little bit more generalized with that number or be very precise with that number when it's a continuous value. Discrete values, they're like my defense. These things are, have a finite number of values. For example, player name, or team division, or position. So I have team name, position, and player number. And an attribute's a way that we aggregate a dimension, if you're not familiar with it. So again, we have these continuous values. They have an infinite range, and then we have discrete values that have a finite range. The reason why I really like player number is because it's a number, but I wouldn't think about the number necessarily as a range. I'm not necessarily going to ask a question about how the position of Wilson's number 3 compared to Baldwin's 89. Like, that's not really going to be a part of my analysis. That doesn't really feel comfortable. You can sort of feel how that number of a player number is different than the 20-yard line versus the 30-yard line. They're not continuously related together. So I can have both continuous and discrete values as a dimension level or as a measure. So score, if I am just counting that particular number, I'm not doing any aggregation on it, it's just the raw number, that can be continuous. Or I can sum up my different quarter results to get a score for the game. With discrete values, I can take the player number, right? Wilson is 3. Or I can take the max player number, the highest player number being some player who is potentially number 99, right? Okay. And that is still a discrete value. So there's some different aggregation levels that you see with continuous values and with discrete values. The ones you see most often with continuous values are sum, average, count distinct. And with aggregations, you often see attribute, which is the special function that says, is this the only value in the set that I'm looking at? Okay. So do I have many different members of my domain? If I do, I get an asterisk. If I just have one unique in my domain, I get that value. Okay? And min and max play on both sides. They're like special teams. They're neither the offense or the defense. Okay? So the unique thing about this is that you both have dimensions, and it's cut off on the bottom, but it says measures there. And a lot of people think that continuous and discrete can be related to continuous as a measure and discrete is a dimension. But you can have continuous and discrete dimensions and measures. So now I'm sure you're probably really confused. I made you a little bit more confused than you were before. So we're going to get into what a continuous and discrete measure does. The screen is like freaking out. So continuous and discrete pills are drawing instructions for vizql. And armed with this information, you'll be able to start to interpret. I can't touch the screen. Let's see if there's a clicker. So once you're armed with this information, you'll actually be able to start drawing anything in Tableau. So continuous values always draws an axis. And a discrete pill is always an instruction to draw a header. So at the very sort of simple basic level, that is the basic instruction that you're sending to vizql when you choose a continuous value or a discrete value. So this is the data set we're going to look at. It is the results of every Seahawks game in the 2016-2017 season. And so I want you to look up. I got to change it for you to look up. Look back at this view. And I want to try to explain what's going on. So I'm going to take, anyways. So each of these blue header or blue pills is drawing a header. And you can see those headers right here. Game, date, opponent, Hawks field advantage. Okay? I also have team in the view, and that's drawing a special header up top, right here, team. And it's breaking it out by the different domain values in team. And finally, I have score. Score is drawing this axis along the bottom. It is continuous. That's why I'm getting the continuous measure there. So looking at a sort of more simplified version, I want you to imagine and draw a box around those different headers that you see. Doing that in your head? Is this what you're starting to see in your head? You've got these columns are each designated with each of those dimensions. So if we take team off and we replace it with score, sorry about this. I don't know why the computer keeps freaking out. You will see that we have that score along the bottom, just like we talked about before. It's not breaking it up any longer. That top score is responsible for this axis on the bottom. And take it another example. This is the one we looked at before, right? Where I have team split across and I have some score. And this is drawing the header up top, and then it's drawing two axes on the bottom, one for each header. Okay. Finally, I'm going to look at an example where all we're looking at in the view is measures. Right? There's no header up top because there's no blue pill in front of that row of 3 green on the column. And so each of those 3 green pills is drawing a separate axis on the bottom. And you'll see that they each have a different axis name, and that's how I know they're different. So remembering continuous always draws an axis, and discrete always draws a header. So how about when I don't have any headers in the view, but I just have measures? It's going to draw for me a scatter plot. I've got one axis along the bottom and one axis along the side. And if I change these green continuous values to blue discrete values, my view changes entirely. See? I want you for a second to think about what you think might be going on. Right? It's completely different. Let me add some lines to help show you what's happening. Tableau is using that discrete value to draw an independent header for each value in the domain. I want you to look on the left axis there, right here. You can see that Tableau is actually skipping numbers, right? 4 and 5 is missing because they're not part of my finite set of numbers that exist in a discrete value range. So so the numbers work different when they're continuous or discrete. I think this is the best example of it. This is score. On the left, I have a continuous value. And you can see that Tableau is drawing that axis and positioning my values where they fall on the axis. When I'm on the right and I use a discrete value, it's sectioning out the same amount of space for each of my members of my domain. And it is skipping any numbers that don't exist in my data set. Sometimes we want what's happening on the right, and we normally want what's happening in the right when we're trying to build a crosstab. So blue values are instrumental in building crosstab. So our big takeaway is that changing from a value from continuous to discrete changes the view. So let me show you how to change a value from continuous to discrete. Back to Tableau. All right, so right here, I have sum of score as a continuous value. I can click the drop-down menu, and right here I have a little menu that says continuous or discrete. Watch what happens when I click discrete. I get all of these values along the top. This looks a little funky and weird, but if I take sum of score and I drag it down to rows, there we go. What I get is a value for the row. And so sometimes when you're building a crosstab, you can actually drag your measures out. I can say grab point spread, bring it out into the view, switch it to discrete, and build out more values in my crosstab. And sometimes this is a really great way to bring more information into a view. I can still take my sum of score and drop it on columns. And I'm going to get that axis. So I can add a little bit more data with those discrete values to my view. Okay. Does that make sense to how I change them? I could change point spread back to continuous, and Tableau is now starting to draw a small scatter plot, the size of my row. So to see what's going on. Every time I do something, I'm sending a different instruction. Tableau is interpreting it and drawing something differently in the view. Okay. So looking at this data, I'm going to look at score and opponent and team. And I'm going to click up on Show Me. Everyone loves Show Me? Show Me is pretty awesome, right? Oops. Click on score too. And I'm going to go ahead and make a tree map here. And so Tableau is dragging all of the values out, and it is making something in the view. Like we know before, if I grab something like team and draw it out, Tableau is going to split that data, draw 2 new headers, and it's going to draw the remaining data in the view. There we go. I drag it out. Tableau splits my data. When I click on Show Me, Tableau is moving the pills to a different place in the view. So right now, all of my pills are over here on the marks card, and all I have is team up top. Look what happens to those pills when I click on the pie chart. Some of my values changed. The position that they're in on the marks card changed. Now, sum of score is on angle, and sum of score is on size, and it's using that information to draw the pie chart. If I pick something else like a bar chart, those are going to jump to my rows and columns. Watch. Everything from my marks card jumped up top to columns and rows. And if I pick different items, Tableau is just going to keep moving those values around because it's moving the instructions for what it's going to draw. So, changing where pills are on shelves changes what's in the view. Is that sitting well with everyone? I see some heads nodding here. Okay. So let's build some stuff. We're going to start with some of the most confusing things around continuous and discrete values, which are dates. Dates like to play both sides of the field. They often are blue pills, and they're often green pills. So, make a new sheet. And when I drag out my date, this is the date that that the games were played into the view. Anytime I drag out a date, it doesn't matter what the date is or if it's a date time field, Tableau will always draw a discrete year of the date. It's what its default is. It will always do that. You can come to expect it to do that. So if I grab date and I drag it out to rows, I'm getting year parenthesis date. And if I click on it, I can actually see the calculation that Tableau is writing. It's using the date part calculation to grab the year of date. Discrete dates have a built-in hierarchy to them. I can click year, and it's going to break it out into quarter. It's going to break it out into month. It will break it out into day. And as you see us go across, it's going to break those out further and further. I'm not really interested in quarter, so I'm going to drag it out to view, and you'll see the information move back. Okay? So I have my year, my month, and my day. And I can drill up or down. This is a built-in hierarchy to Tableau. Dates can also be continuous. When they're continuous, they act a bit differently. So I'm going to take all of these out of the view. And this time, I want to force Tableau to act differently when I drag my date into the view because I don't want a header. I want an axis. So on a Mac, I can hold down the Option key, or on a PC, I can hold down the Control key when I drag it out, and I can get a menu that gives me a lot of different options for how the date is going to show up in the view. So I have date. I'm going to hold down my Option key because I'm on a Mac. Remember, it's Control key on a PC, and drag it out to where we dropped it before. And I get this menu. It's called a drop field menu. It's one of my favorite hidden gems, G-E-M-S, in Tableau, because it allows you to select what you want before you go and mess up your view by putting the wrong thing there. So let's take a look at this. On the top, I have date continuous and date discrete. And these are the dimensions. This is going to make a mark for every row that exists in my data. This is going to give me access to the raw data that I have. So the continuous will draw the axis. The date discrete will draw a header. So I'm going to click on the first one. I have a continuous axis of time from late August through early January. And you can see here I have that green pill in the view. I'm going to do it again. This time I'm going to grab the discrete date, and we'll see what happens. I am getting a list of every date in my data set. But I want to break this down in ways that I want to break it down. So there are other options in the menu. I'm going to, again, hold down Option, drag out that menu, and let's look at what else there is there. I can take the date part as a discrete value for year, quarter, month, day. And that's simply going to give me what month it occurred in, what day it occurred in. It's going to be the date part. I also have an option for weekday, month and year, and month, day, and year. And then I have these other ones that look really different. I have count, count distinct, min, and max. These are all measures I could choose from if I wanted to look at my date in a slightly different way. And then finally at the bottom, I have year, quarter, month, week, and day in continuous values. I'm going to choose quarter. I'm going to choose month and drag it out into the view. So Tableau is building an axis for me on the left, and it is drawing a mark for each month that I exist in my data set. Just like discrete dates, I can drill into continuous dates. But it's going to act really differently. Watch what happens this time. It replaced itself with the new value. Continuous dates do this because if I take a second value, I'm going to duplicate by hitting Control and pull it out into the view. Oops. Sorry. It's Command on a Mac, Control on a PC. Tableau is drawing two different axes. I have my first one, which corresponds to the first pill, and I have the second one that corresponds to the second pill. Okay. Take a look at what happens on the marks card as I select each axis. First, this menu opens, then, if I click on the bottom menu opens. Let me change this to day so that you can see it a little better. So in the marks card, you can see that there is one for week date and one for day date. This is where I can put additional drawing instructions corresponding to that area of the view. Okay. So I could set the color for one. Go ahead and set it to green. We like blue and green. Here in the view, let me zoom back out. And you can see that Tableau is now coloring these marks separately than these marks. That is because I'm drawing a different axis for each set of marks. If I wanted to, I could combine these together, and my pills are going to change slightly. I'm going to click, and I'm going to say, I want to have a dual axis. I want these to share the same I don't want them to sit above, I want them to share the same space in my view. So I'm going to click dual axis, and we can see that Tableau is lining these sets up together. Let's put something in the middle so that Tableau, we can see what's going on. There we go. So I have my axis on the left with my week information, and I have my axis on the right with my day. Let's change this to a circle so you can see them differently. Okay. And if I want those axes to be aligned, I can click and say synchronize my axis. This will make the minimum value on my axes and my maximum value on my axes the same. If you look up top, you can see that Tableau is showing you that the marks are shaped differently. I have one on the left and one on the right, and they sort of are forming one big pill. They're each half of a pill. Okay? So I have week on the left, I have day on the right. Okay? I'm going to take them, and maybe I want them to be swapped. I'm going to turn and swap them, just like that. I can put one in front of the other. In my view. So again, Tableau is giving me a hint that the drawing instructions that it's interpreting are different. So one of my favorite things to do with dates in Tableau is to build calendars. Who's ever seen a calendar built in Tableau? A couple people, so you guys might have an idea of how to do it. All right, let's make a new mark. And I'm going to pull date back out into the view. I have 2016 and 2017 in my date here, and I'm going to drag one step further to show quarter, and then month. And then I actually want this to be week, so I'm going to change it under more to week number. So it's splitting out each week in my data. Okay. And now I want to show the day. And I want to show the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the weekday. So again, I'm going to grab date. I'm going to hold down my Option key and drag it out to columns. And I'm going to pick weekday from the menu. Something really interesting happened, right? I have Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday. Those are all the days of the week that NFL games are played, but I want a full calendar. So to get a full calendar, I need to tell Tableau to pull in some additional data to my data set. So we're going to go back and we're going to edit our calculation, or edit our data source. And we're going to bring in some additional information to make our data source a little bit more rich and have values for every day in the period we're looking for. So in my data set, I have my initial data around the Seahawks scores, but I also have this table called dim date, and this stands for dimension date. Most organizations, if you have a SQL Server or some kind of data warehouse, probably have a dim date table that you can join to. In this case, I'm just making my own. So I have date as my header, and I started my data set with August 1st. And all I did was I clicked on the corner cell and I dragged it down and populated with a couple months worth of data. So this data, I think, goes through the end of January. So really, really simple to make. Let's go back to our data connection window. I'm going to grab this dim date table and I'm going to bring it into the view and drop it. And Tableau has found the join. It has the date field in common, and it's assigning a join type to it. I have my inner join, a left join, a right join, or a full join. An inner join means that Tableau will keep the data that's shared. All I'll get is an additional date field for every row that I already have. That's not what I want. And if I choose a left join, it'll do the exact same thing. A right join is going to give me a row for every set of data we just made in that table. And it's going to join it to the Seahawks data that I already have, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to click on right. And I can sort of see that the number of records has increased substantially because my scroll bar is a little shorter. If we scroll down, we'll see what's happening. That's interesting. Tableau is taking the date field, and I have a lot of dates where all of the rest of the information is empty. This is exactly what I want. So I'm going to come back to sheet 4, and I'm going to say update, maybe. Oh, I'm going to take my date field, and I'm going to replace my current date with the date from that new data source. So I'm going to right-click on command, and I'm going to say replace references. And everywhere that we're using the current date, I want it to use the date from the new table. So I'm going to pick date from the dim date table and click OK. And Tableau just added all of those dates to the view. Okay, you guys following what just happened there? Right? Because now I have a row for every day. So I can take the point spread, or I can take my, where is, if they won or not. There was an outcome field and I don't see it. All right, well, we'll just go with it. I will grab my score date and drop it on color, and Tableau is now coloring the view. I'm going to hide show me so you can see it. And so I'm getting the higher values where I have my score. That makes sense about what happened there? So I am drawing headers, and if I wanted to, I could put data inside my calendar. I could even draw a line inside my calendar square, right? I would just need to make sure that my data is joined right to give me a copy of, say, what happened that same day last week to join to that dim date table, right? So if I say I want every date historically that happened on the first Monday of the month, I could look at my time series over time about Monday in the view. Okay? I just need to make sure that my data is structured that way to come into Tableau. All right. Oh, I know I'm confused because there we go. So I like to think about discrete dates like components of a Lego minifigure. I can take them off and swap them out and put new combinations together in whatever order I want. Versus a continuous date that's more like a piece of string. My end point and my start point are fixed in time. I might be able to cut a piece of string off and only looking at a portion, but I'm still going to have that start period and end period. I'm always going to have that line. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how continuous and discrete values activate different submenus in Tableau. So sometimes you know that you can do a certain thing with dates, but then you go to click on the menu and it just doesn't look right. It's not what you're expecting. It's probably because you're on the discrete date menu and not the continuous date menu. So let's take a look about what that means in Tableau. So placing a continuous value on the filter, let's see, command. This is really small on the screen, sorry. I am going to pick my range of dates. And this is what the continuous date menu looks like in Tableau. Because I am looking at a time range, an infinite number of dates. Tableau lets me pick any date between the minimum value in my data source and my maximum value in my data source. I could pick a relative date, something that is last week, last quarter, next week, next month, the last 3 years, relative to today or any day I choose. I can also choose, I just want to define the start date and have it include any date that might ever be after it. Or I only want to see dates that happen before a certain date. So I am really only interested in what happened early in the season. So I could pick 10/15/2016 as my date. And you'll see here that Tableau shrunk this bar down, representing to me that I'm only using a portion of my string. I'm only using the first portion of that string. I'm going to click OK. I used the wrong date field. That's why it did that. So So I needed to use dim date. So let me put it out into the view and do it one more time. A range of dates. And I only want dates prior to 10/15/2016. I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that Tableau has now shortened up the number of dates that it's showing. If I show my filter, I can move these date values back and forth, right? I'm truncating how much of the string I am showing. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, So instead, if I take this off filters and instead use my discrete value, remember it's going to default to years right away when I drop it on the screen normally, but I get that menu when I drop a date, a discrete date onto the date field. It asks me, hey, what do you want to have you do? And in this case, I can just say, I want to see specific years. Click OK, and it's going to list out for me the years that Tableau has in the date range. So I only see 2016, and we'll see the bottom part down here disappear in the viz when I hit apply. And I'm very quickly truncating that data. Okay, but I could do that with different date parts. Again, I'm going to drag it out into the view. I'm going to get my menu. And now I can say I only want specific, a specific month or day. There's a special one down here called individual dates. And when I click on it, I get a list of all of the dates in my data source. I can click very specific dates that I want. And I've got to choose and click each specific one. And if I hit apply, we'll just see that it broke down just a small bit of the information. Okay, I'm going to hit reset so everything comes back. Okay. This performs very slowly in Tableau when you're running a query. So sometimes if you're using a discrete date like this, you can use a condition and write a formula that says that I only want a date that is before or after a certain date. And that will perform much quicker in my data warehouse when I query. Okay. So I can also do this with measures, or with other measures besides dates. So for example, if I bring score out into the view, I'm going to pull date off back to our calendar, score out into the view, I get that same menu. I'm going to choose average, and I have that same range of values filters before, because this is the continuous filter menu. Okay? So I can say I only want to look at high scoring games. Let me move this off to the side. Let's move this up to a combined score of 24, somewhere in there. And now Tableau has filtered my data to only show me games where the score was above 24. Okay. Conversely, I could choose to only look at opponents. And I will get the list of teams in the view. There's some other special options, like a wildcard filter. So let's say that I know that we play the Rams at some point in the year, but I don't know what town they're in, and there's a really long list of data. I could just type in Rams and hit apply, and Tableau would show me that we had 2 games that year. All right. So the other place that Tableau's, I'll stay here. The other place that Tableau has a different set of menus for discrete and continuous values is on the color shelf. So I'm going to just build a new viz here really quick. I'm going to look at date. Let me grab Option key. And I want a list of all of the dates that we played. Okay. And I want the name of the opponent. So I'm going to drag that out into the view. And now I want to look at the point spread. How many points were difference between what the Seahawks scored and their opponent scored? So I'm going to grab the point spread out and drag it into the view. Little trick to remember. You almost always want to draw you place your continuous measure opposite of your headers. When in doubt, it goes opposite to the other side. And that's going to give me along the side. If I drop it next to my headers, it's going to expand and put that axis in the area of where that header was drawn. So if I drop it over here, you'll see that Tableau's now drawn that axis right there in the row. Okay? Almost always, I find people really intend for it to be on the opposite side. So I'm going to click that there and click it back. So now we can see the point spread of a game. I can see where the Seahawks outscored their team and where they got beat. Okay? So we're going to look and color this in different ways. If I take the score and I drop it onto colors, this is a continuous value. Tableau's going to build an axis. It's just going to build it in a place that you're not necessarily thinking. Right here, Tableau has built an axis in my colors. Right? That's why I'm getting the range of colors in the view. If I had taken score, holding down Option, remember I can get that extra drop menu, and chosen the discrete value. I know it's really hard to see because it's really tiny, but that one's blue right there, and clicked OK. We'll just change it to discrete here. Tableau would segment those out in the list, just like it did when we had those two lists side by side. And I'm getting a unique value for each one. Okay? That makes sense about what's happening? So in this menu, I can double click in and edit my colors. And I get this color palette menu with really awesome colors. Little fun fact, Narelle Stone. Narelle is Shahaf from Devs on Stage. So next time that you're in with the menu and you see Narelle Stone, Narelle is Shahaf's last name. And Narelle was the first, her first project at Tableau was designing these new color palettes. So, but I can change my colors to any that I want. I can click here and I can assign them by clicking, apparently not. I'll just say assign palette. Here we go. It was just warning me that I have more members in my domain than I have in here. And I'm going to click OK. So now I'm getting a different color for each bar in my view. Okay. Sometimes people will want to bin their data together. In essence, I want to group all of these together. And I can sit here in my color menu and group, and Tableau is creating a new discrete header with the group. Okay. So I'm now assigning these ones this color, and these last two here will be this last one. Right? And Tableau is grouping and assigning that one color to everyone in that group. There's another really great way to get segmented colors like this using the continuous date. So I'm going to grab that score, drag it back out into the view here, and take a look at this menu. Okay? I'm getting a very different color menu experience in Tableau. I'm getting the ability to choose a palette of colors that are a range, that move across an axis. In this case, I'm going to pick my blue and green on the bottom here. So my lowest number is being colored green, my highest number is being colored blue. And let me apply it so you guys can see what happens. So again, let me do it with, it's hard to tell. Let me do it with point spread. It makes it easier to see. So I'm going to edit my colors, change it to blue-green diverging, and hit apply. So I have my green here. I've got some light green. I've got some light to medium blue and a dark blue. I want these to be more segmented. I want them to be binned together. I can click on stepped color, and Tableau will divide my range into 5 segments, or as many segments as I choose. I could choose 4 if I don't want that gray. I could choose more, or my favorite sometimes is just to pick 2. This is a really great way to quickly get if something is above or below 0. Okay? I can drag my continuous axis out onto the colors and drop it. And I can then, under advanced, set my center to 0. And anything below 0, I can color red for negative, and above it, green for positive. That's a really quick way to get that, how were my sales doing? Really bad. We were unprofitable. All we had was returns, or we're doing great. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK. And I have the green on the left and the blue on the right. So, coming back. So, I'm going to just review sort of the instructions that we learned. Continuous and discrete pills are drawing instructions for vizql to translate the data that I have into a visualization. Continuous values always draw an axis, and discrete values always draw a header. Changing from continuous to discrete on a pill will change the view. And changing where pills are, what shelves they're on, changes the view. And finally, continuous and discrete values activate different menus in Tableau. So my hope for you is that as you're building things, as you're coming across workbooks, you're starting to pay attention to what the pills are doing. The pills are extremely meaningful, more than I think a lot of people think. So one of the things I love to do when I see a really cool thing show up on Tableau Public is I like to download the workbook, and I like to go take a look at the pills on what they're doing. So my hope for all of you is that you go out on Tableau Public, you find some really cool stuff. There are really cool vizzies out there on how to make sand key diagrams or network diagrams. Really, really cool stuff. And all it takes is understanding what the pills are doing and what the data shape looks like underneath. So again, my name is Ashley Howard, and I want to thank you guys all for coming both to the session and Tableau. And remind you to take the survey. We really, really do use this data. We use it to make decisions about what to do next year, so make sure you do do the survey. When you came in, they were supposed to be handing out my business card. Did everyone get that? Awesome. If you didn't get it, it probably means you came in after they ran out. Okay, so who got a business card with an orange on the back? All right, awesome. And if you have an orange business card, anyone have a number on the back? Awesome. Who has number 1? All right, would you like a Tableau notebook or Tableau sunglasses? Awesome. Gray or blue? Gray. Awesome. If you have a number come up, I'll make sure you get a prize. Thank you guys all for coming. Hope you enjoy the session and the rest of conference.